Jay-Z's Roc Nation is spearheading a new $300 million educational campaign in Philadelphia, but it's not what it seems. Jay-Z's Roc Nation unveiled the campaign called the Pennsylvania Award for Student Success. It's aimed at promoting a new school voucher program for Philadelphia K-12 students from low-income households. For context, vouchers have been controversial nationwide, but especially in Pennsylvania, where Republicans have painted them as a way to help students leave underperforming schools. On the other side, Democrats and teachers' unions oppose sending taxpayer money to private schools, believing the money should instead be invested in the public education system. One of the largest teachers' unions in the United States, AFT Pennsylvania, responded to the news, tweeting, quote, "This ain't it. And for good measure, here's a still of Jay-Z and Jeffrey Yass, PA's richest man, potential Trump Treasury Secretary, and the force behind the voucher push in Pennsylvania." The president of the AFT then said, quote, "The crisis in public education funding in America could have been solved a long time ago if billionaires like Jeff Yass and Jay-Z simply paid their fair share in taxes, instead of robbing needed money from public schools to fund failed voucher schemes which hurt poor kids." Now, for its part on the campaign website, it states the program budget will be fulfilled by government funds from a separate line item and will not reduce the overall budget to public education programming.
New York Magazine journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones was not buying it. She was furious at the hip-hop magazine for making the program seem like a heroic gesture, and she tweeted, quote, "Read the fine print. It's a lie that these programs do not take from public school funding. Fewer kids in the classrooms means fewer dollars to the school, and Roc Nation's involvement is to convince poor black parents to leave the public school." There's no doubt that some of these public schools are struggling. For example, only about 1/3 of 3rd through 8th graders meet proficiency in English. That's according to the 2023 Pennsylvania System of School Assessment. Responding to the criticism, Roc Nation CEO told the Huffington Post, quote, "If you have a better solution aside from making students wait until the public school system can get it together with the funding they're receiving, I'm all ears." It's worth noting that Meek Mill and Kevin Hart similarly criticized for donating millions in private schools scholarships in the Philadelphia area. I think we're going to argue about this because I am totally and wildly in support of that. I would defund the entire public education, the schools, take them whatever money is being allocated to the failing public school systems that can't even teach kids to read, despite getting billions of dollars from the state and federal government. Some of the per pupil funding in these failing school districts, Philadelphia and others, is massive. For the price the school gets per student, you could just give that money to the family and get them a private education that would be 10 times better. We are trapping kids in failing schools out of some jobs providing program for teachers who suck at their jobs. That's my view.
Tell me how you really feel, Robby.
Yeah, I feel strongly about this because I think it's a crime to force kids to go to, like, because of the zip code you reside in, you have to go to that school. And what education reformers, many of them Democrats, this used to be at least a bipartisan issue. Now the teachers' unions have so much sway, maybe it's not. But many Democrats, and I guess hip-hop moguls, fine, whoever, saying that we're not saying government can't provide money for schools, but does the government have to run the school when they're clearly bad at it?
So I am the daughter of a public school teacher.
Okay.
I'm the product of public school K through college, and my children are in public school right now. And I've had very different experiences from each of these districts and opportunities, and so I see it as a little bit more nuanced. In each of these, I have one system that was wonderfully funded and supported by parents and is very community-oriented and really, frankly, was the ideal of what public education should be, which is let's make sure that children aren't working to make matchsticks in a factory and have equal access to an education that will launch them potentially to be productive citizens in the future and reach their own potential, right? That's the theory, particularly in countries where they don't have public education systems. The choice ends up being for many families that they either their children work at a young age, or they have to pay exorbitant amounts of money because private schools are able to charge whatever they want to charge, regardless of the public funding. So there's a theory of the case. What you're talking about is how that has fallen through the gaps and the problems that we've seen along the way. We have not seen public schools in multiple states been fully funded. In fact, this is what Jay-Z is contributing to, is the idea that, let's take, the city wants $100 million to go to vouchers and try this out. Give them to certain families and people, let them go to a private school. Now, what's shown in the data is that in those private schools, when those students don't perform to meet the metric, like whatever they want to show for their performance metrics, for their brand or their brochure, those students get kicked out and there's nowhere for them to go. So that voucher money then disappears. They spent the money, it didn't work. Where does the kid go? Number one. Number two, Jay-Z is actually asking for $300 million, like triple the amount the city wants for the same program. So just because it is a celebrity, just because it is a black celebrity who people would assume is liberal or progressive, I just want to let people know, look under the hood, read the fine print, and understand that many of these announcements are not because the person is who you think they should be. Jeff Yass, who is a big Trump donor, is the richest man in Pennsylvania. He is part of the camp in which you talk about how private schools are the way to go. He is the one who is bringing hip-hop celebrities to appeal to black families to send their kids to private school. That's what's going on here.
I mean, it seems like we're making complicated something that's very simple. Philadelphia gets, I just looked it up, $4.5 billion. That's its budget every year for education. The state of Pennsylvania is one of the highest spending on education states. The per pupil spending in the Philadelphia district is $22,000 per student. I did not go to public school. I went to a private Catholic school for the first 12 years of my life. $22,000, I mean, that was a while ago, but $22,000 would have paid for multiple years
Not
of
anymore.
A private education. Okay.
Not anymore. Yeah, no. And and we also know with colleges, right? When Reagan decided that the University of California system was no longer going to be public, he wanted people to pay for the schooling. They knew the private schools realized that they have federal backing, they have voucher backing, they raise the prices, right? College is unaffordable for most people without a loan that ends up, hanging over your head for the most of your lifetime. And
you can go to,
but that's the challenge with
community college is not unaffordable.
That's the challenge. Big fan of community colleges. But that's the problem now with private schools in the the districts where I could send my children to private school. It is $20,000 to $30,000 a year. Also, earlier segment we were talking about IVF. $30,000 for one round. So much of what we have considered to be good for society and good for families that is worthy of community and public support has now been monetized to death for profit.
Well, I guess I would just ask the families. I would say to the families in Philadelphia, would you like your kid to go to this failing school and have the government write the school a check for $22,000? Or would you like a check for $22,000 and then you can spend that on your child's education however best you see fit? I think the families and the kids themselves should be the decision makers, not the... again, if the public school, some public schools are wonderful. I'm not universally against public education or public schools. Some do a fantastic job. But but it's clearly not a question of money because some of the districts that get the most money, that spend the most per kid, have the worst outcomes of all. And in those cases, I don't see why choice and competition being good for every other sector of the economy, every other service being offered. We want competition in grocery stores and everything else. We want more competition. I don't know why competition would be bad but the education sector uniquely has to be a government monopoly. It doesn't seem to be working.
So where competition works is because there has been actual regulation on some of it. The idea of monopolistic competition or competition that ends up being dominated by just one company is no longer competition. So if there's going to be, for example, a voucher program where you hand a check to a family and say, this is the public money, go put your child in the school where you think that they will do best, but then that school cannot kick your child out because they feel like it, right? That would be a regulation, that would be a stipulation that right now we don't have when it comes to these private school programs that are getting my taxpayer dollars, right? Like if I'm gonna sit here and support somebody else's kid going to a private school, I wanna know it's actually gonna do what they said they're gonna do and not turn it around just for their own profit.
I mean, sure. I'm not saying there can't be any regulations on
I just
places
get you to agree
getting
to regulation on school choice.
We can have yes. If an institution is going to get public dollars, it can come with some strings attached. I just think if we're going to spend the money anyway, we should give it to institutions with a proven track. Because then, if those schools fail, they go to business, and some other school comes along. I think that's
in America.
The public school doesn't go out of business when it has math and reading scores lower than utterly failing. There's no there. What happens is they say we need more money, but the funding never goes down, ever. There's never a decrease in the amount of education funding. Look over time, it's a graph like this. Despite the math and reading scores like this, the funding like this. So there's no correlation there.
You know what else doesn't change? The school buildings. And this is part of the capital cost of what it takes to now upgrade these buildings that are in sweltering heat in the middle of a city is astronomical, right? This is the whole reason even Trump had an infrastructure week, right? The bridges collapsing all over the country. We are sitting here in buildings and structures that are not designed for the modern age, literally are crumbling, and then we say, oh yeah, send your kid to school there's no air conditioning at all.
No, sure. The schools got, and this has scandalized me, and I don't know why it's happened, and even my, when I've argued about this with people and liberal and people on the left, they're also don't understand why this was the case. Schools got, during COVID, hundreds of billions of dollars to spend to make the schools more, we don't need to do this anymore, but more safe from COVID, but also just upgrade the infrastructure of the schools.
Ventilation was the big one. Yep.
And that money, to a staggering degree, was just spent on nothing at all. They just didn't do it, despite that money being given to the states, to the local authorities to do this. It just didn't, whatever bureaucracy takes hold, it just didn't happen.
So I will then take your point and move it further, which is there's the bureaucracies, and bureaucracies exist in corporate and in government. Fix the bureaucracies, but let's not blame the teachers who are now facing, not only having dealt with COVID and frankly a lot of crazy parents during COVID and children who are having their own emotional challenges after COVID and are just trying to get through the day.
All right, more Rising right after this.